I wanted to interview the different founders of the Compassion Coalition to find out why they're interested in being a part of this movement to prevent children from medically transitioning, how they got involved, and just hear their stories. So today is Lynn Meagher. And Lynn, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, Erin. Thanks for doing the interview. So I think the best description I have of myself is of a parent advocate, and so my whole focus of interest in this subject is as a parent.
Mm-hmm.
I have two children who they're adult children who identify as transgender, and so that's where I come into this whole debate and topic. So my interest in this has come from my desire to both to understand the issues that they're grappling with, and to understand my role as a parent and how I can be um, truly and completely supportive. And when I say supportive, I mean supportive of my my children as people, as whole people who inhabit bodies. Um, and so I believe that parents who desire for their children to be whole in the bodies that they inhabit are supportive. Um, and so there's a lot of corruption of language that's happened in this debate.
So you have children who have they socially transitioned or medically transitioned?
Um, so both.
Mhm.
And with my daughter, I'm not completely sure how much transition she has undertaken at this point because I'm not told.
One
So,
of the things that I've heard trans activists say about you, because you have done some interviews and you've talked about your
mhm,
story publicly because you're so concerned about your children. And
mhm,
I've heard people attack you and say that you don't love your children because you're not supporting them in their transition. Can you just
mhm.
talk about that a little bit?
Well, I can appreciate and understand that maybe this is what my children want, um, and I appreciate that. Um, there are a lot of other things that our children might think that they want, that as parents we might want to take a better look at and say, are you really sure in the end that that's what's going to be the most helpful thing for you? Um, and I don't believe that it's supportive for me, that it would be supportive for me to lie to my children about who they are. I believe that it would be supportive of me to tell my children the truth about who they are. And while they're adults and they absolutely have, as adults, they have the right to make their own decisions in life. And I haven't done anything to prevent them from making those decisions. Um, I'm not I'm not required, in order to love them, I'm not required to agree with everything that they do. Um,
It kind of reminds me, the narrative a little bit, of a drug using child
yeah.
who feels really good about their drug use because it makes them feel so good.
Mhm.
It gets rid of their problems. It makes them feel accepted.
Yeah.
But as a parent, if we accept a child's drug addiction and don't step in and try and help them to be healthy and safe, then we're
Mhm.
really not doing our job as parents.
Yeah, if our children's issue is drug use, then we call that enabling.
Mhm.
And we say, well, you really got to stop enabling this habit so that they can get well and recover. Um, and, you know, young people are recovering now from gender confusion and gender dysphoria. It's called detransitioning and desistance. And they are moving past it, recovering from it, and then having to assess the damage that's been done to them through the therapies that they really desperately wanted when they were younger and wrapped up in the transgender world. And 100% of them will say, when at, at the time that I was offered these treatments, I wanted them. I wanted them more than anything in the whole world. And now I realize that all these things did was hurt me. And I wish somebody had told me that I was hurting myself. I wish someone had warned me that I might feel differently about this in 5 or 10 years. And what we, in the words of Paul Dirks, we're finding that the best studies show the worst outcomes.
Can
When
you
we're
talk about that a little bit? Because I think there are some people who don't understand this issue very well, who have heard that if you don't affirm a child, that they're going to kill themselves. And they'll tell parents it's better to have a transgender child than a dead child. And this is a narrative that scares parents a lot. So can you talk about what the research really shows?
Well, first of all, can you think of a more manipulative, poisonous, horrible thing to say to a parent?
Yeah, it's just, it puts the parent in a no-win situation
Yeah,
because
there really is no way that you can win when you're presented with those as the two options.
it's just, it's
Um,
probably one of the most emotionally manipulative things that I've ever seen
It
happen.
is. It's so incredibly manipulative, and it makes me very angry when I hear that. And I've talked to so many parents who were told that those were their choices. Um, and so the thing about the thing about the research is that if you read these papers and you actually try to piece together the the methodology and the designs of the studies and the metadata and all those other things, I mean, these conclusions are not borne out. They're just not.
Well, and one of
Um,
the things that I think people who don't understand research
mhm,
don't understand what is a valid methodology and what isn't. And
right.
almost every study that I've seen on these that show positive outcomes are
Mhm,
self-selected and self-reporting. And
right.
those both undermine the credibility of the studies.
Right. They also are not, they don't have they don't have good longitudinal data. So they're asking a self-selected group of young people who have just undergone transition, are you happy now? And it's been like 1 year. And, um, and, and they're, because they're a self-selected group, they're, yeah, they're happy. Yes,
Well,
I'm
they're
really.
also, if they weren't happy, can you imagine the implications of admitting to yourself that you did all this stuff, you damaged your body
Mhm,
permanently, and
mhm.
you're still feeling all those feelings of distress?
Right, it didn't work. And so one of the huge holes in the data is that a huge number of these young people have been lost to follow-up.
Mhm.
So 40%, 50%, even 70% of the patients, when they try to study them a couple years out, they're lost to follow-up. That is an unacceptable number of lost to follow-up. If we
When
were
you say
studying.
lost to follow up, can you explain what that means?
Lost to follow up means that you tried to contact these people to find out how they were doing and you can't find them.
So we have no
So
idea if
we
they're,
don't know. We don't know if they're happy. We
mhm.
don't know if they've committed suicide after they transitioned because they found out that they weren't happy, which happens. We don't know if they're alive. We don't know if they're satisfied. We don't know if they've detransitioned and they're too ashamed to come forward and say so. We don't know what happened to these young people. And so then they'll take the small number of respondents they did get and they'll say, yeah, everybody was happy. But if you've lost 50% of your cohort,
It's
you
huge.
can't say that everyone was happy. You can say that we lost 50%, so those we don't know, but we can't assume that they're doing well because we can't even find them. If they were doing well, you'd probably be able to find them.
Right.
That's my feeling. If they were doing great, you would be able to contact them. They'd be still around.
That's one of the
And
reasons I think that the Swedish study is so powerful, because
yeah.
it's a longitudinal study, and because Sweden is a socialized government,
Mhm.
socialized healthcare system, they were able to track all the people who transitioned, and they had outrageously poor results, something like
Really poor results. And
17%
right,
higher rates of
right,
suicide.
but not until after 10 years.
Right.
So the 1 year, 2 year, it's pretty good, but then you get out to 10 years, and all of a sudden the data started showing this precipitous and really scary fall in their outcomes. Way more suicide, way more unhappiness, self-reporting depression, all anxiety, basically just kind of lost in life. And so that was the best study, and it shows the worst outcomes. So
So as a mom, that must terrify you.
yeah, absolutely it does. Yeah, so transgender people are constantly saying that they are marginalized and that they have all kinds of health problems that they can't get help for, and that they feel like people stare at them all the time and view them as a curiosity. And I don't know what kind of a parent would want their child to be marginalized, physically unhealthy, and viewed as a curiosity. Why would you want that for your child?
Well, and I guess from my perspective, as someone who was a trans child and
Mhm.
has had contact with lots of people who are transgender and desisted, that we've all identified that there was something that really caused us to move in that direction. In my
Mhm.
case, it was a sexual assault, and in some cases, it's I'm increasingly seeing girls who are uncomfortable with being sexualized, and rather than being gender nonconforming, they're moving into this to being transgender and having their breasts removed and taking testosterone and permanently damaging their healthy bodies.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. It's very concerning, isn't it? And the thing is with trauma is that when we don't address the actual trauma, we don't process the pain of that trauma, and we try to run from it in some way. Our minds, our bodies, our hearts, our emotions, they all still remember and internalize that trauma. And there is no amount of cosmetic surgery or medications that you can take to erase a trauma by trying to run away from it. Um, and I know that, in your case, when you were sexually molested, that trauma needed to be dealt with. And you certainly weren't going to run away from it. Your immature way of dealing with it was to call yourself a boy.
Mm-hmm.
But now that there was no way that was going to heal that trauma for you.
Right. And
No
it
way.
really, it makes me so sad. I hear stories of girls who, I feel like we're living in an increasingly sexualized society where girls' bodies are objectified so much.
Mhm.
And one of the solutions to that is to say, well, I'm not a girl. And unfortunately, rather than empowering these girls and teaching them, good skills, we are accepting the idea that they can be something that they're not and encouraging them to damage their bodies.
Right. There's a lot of ways to be a girl. And
Exactly.
some girls don't like makeup and they like to go hunting with dogs and, or, play rough sports or, become a nuclear physicist. That's okay to be that kind of girl. And it's okay to be the kind of girl that wears a lot of makeup and wants to stay home and raise children. There are no limits to the different kinds of woman that you can be. And I don't know why we're considering it progressive to revert back to rigid gender stereotypes and say, this is what girls look like, this is what boys look like. And if you don't fit into this box, then you probably belong to one of these other 400 boxes.
Isn't
And
it ironic that
there's an incredible amount of navel gazing too that goes on. So there's all these different genders, and there's like, okay, I'm this because sometimes I don't know who I am, and sometimes I feel female about 40% of the time and male about 20% of the time, and the rest of the time I don't know who I am. And so this is my gender category. And I mean, they have flags for all these different genders. And it takes an incredible amount of energy to spend that much time analyzing what gender you are.
Well, and
instead
in
of,
some ways, I see it as very self-occupied, I guess is a
it
good
is very self-occupied, yeah. There's a lot of things that, you know, could be taking up a young person's time that would be a lot more productive. Um, and, you know, I mean, um, I don't know what it feels like to be a woman. I'm just a woman. And if I had to spend all my time wondering whether I am one, I think I'd be really confused. I don't know about you, but that's really, really frustrating and time consuming. I mean, I would rather spend my time figuring out what kind of a person I ought to be and then pursuing that.
Mhm. Well,
You
and it
know,
is when I think about all the messages that we're now getting that so when somebody when a male attempts to be a female, the way they show that is by taking on these very exaggerated gender
mhm,
stereotypes,
yeah.
which women like me, women like you may not even adhere to. So it's like males are now defining what it means to be a woman.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
dysfunctional males who are thinking that they're uncomfortable with their body. So it is very confusing. So
It's really confusing, and you know, and then we have a very exaggerated performative femininity in our culture too, and we have for a long time. And you know, I think that now that kids are on social media and they're constantly comparing themselves with other girls, and it's always been hard to measure up with all the other girls. I mean, I remember as a girl
yeah.
thinking that I was never as pretty as some of the other girls. And, you know, in the era that I was growing up, you know, you had to have, if you had really, really long, really straight hair and you were really thin, and well, thin has always been a thing, but there was this look, you know, and I wasn't built that way. And so, it was difficult. And then you go through puberty and you don't like that you're getting, you know, that your body is developing. You're not happy about getting periods. You're not happy about having breasts. You're not happy about having to wear a bra. You don't like the male attention. Puberty isn't comfortable for anyone. Ask any woman, how did you enjoy puberty? um, and you know, most of us struggle at least a little bit with it, and some more than others. But there are a lot of really, really important things that happen in your body and your mind, your soul, and your brain in during puberty. And it's a time of life that we all have to get through. Um,
And I
and
feel like I want to tell these kids and adults, most people are not 100% happy with their bodies.
No, no, nobody is. Who is? Why do you think we have all this plastic surgery if everybody's happy with their body? I mean, and why are there all of these products to change your body? Um, you know, everything from you know, crash diets and pills to gyms and workouts and, you know, grapefruit diets. You know, no one is happy with their body. Um,
The interesting
so,
thing is, though, that I spoke with a cosmetic surgeon because I was asking him, why is it that transgender people get to have surgeries to look how they want, but those of us who aren't transgender don't get that covered by our insurance, and
yeah.
it's not encouraged. And
Mhm.
because that's something that I've always wondered. And he said that actually, as a cosmetic surgeon, he was trained to never give cosmetic surgery to someone who thought that the cosmetic surgery would make their life better. Isn't that interesting?
Well, that's really an interesting concept, because we certainly seems like we're doing that with these kids, isn't it?
Hmm.
Yeah, and they're reaching for a nirvana they're never going to find. It really does break my heart. And um, so and you know, and then I'd like to talk a little bit about what happens in families when a young person decides that they have this transgender identity.
I would love to hear that because when I took on my transgender identity, my
Mhm,
mom was confused, my teachers were confused. I was
mhm,
sent to a school psychologist who said, she's got some issues.
mhm.
None of them said, "Oh, well, she's a boy. That's why she's acting like this."
Yeah.
And so I would love to hear your insights as somebody who's been told that's how you're supposed to respond, but that you know in your heart that that's not how you need to respond.
Right. Well, I think it's really difficult to describe, if you haven't been through it, what it's like for your child to um, suddenly and really inexplicably take on a new identity, um, and they pretty much do a 180. So all of a sudden you're supposed to call your daughter he. They usually come up with a new name, and if you use the name that you have always called them, then they call that dead naming, and they tell you that's abusive. Um, I know when I named my children, we thought very long and hard about what their names should be, and and when I'll never forget when my children were born, and the first time I saw them, and I called them those names
Mm.
and held them, and those are their names. I gave them those names in love,
You've called
and
them those names
called them
as
those
you raised
call
them.
yes, called them those names all their lives. And two of my children have legally changed their names, so they have rejected their names to the point where they no longer legally have those names. Um, and it's very painful for me to think that those names are now something that they find abusive. Um, I remember when I've only heard my daughter's voice one time since she's been on testosterone.
Mm.
And so I don't actually know what it sounds like right now. But it was already very changed and deepened. And I had to come to the realization that I was never going to hear my daughter's voice again. And sometimes I wake up and I think that I might forget what it sounded like.
That just that is just so sad. As
Yeah,
a mother, I think
it's really sad. Um, and so I, it was more or less an atomic bomb in my family and in my life. It was a nuclear explosion. It exploded everything that I had ever dreamed about, everything that I had ever envisioned, everything that I had spent my whole life hoping for my kids. I mean, I don't have these um, rigid expectations of who I wanted my children to be, but I did hope that they would be happy and well adjusted and productive, and that they would use all their gifts and abilities. They have many. Um, and I certainly believe that I would always be part of their lives. Um, and um, I mean, it's just, I wake up every morning and I wonder where they are and how they are and whether they're okay. Um, my children, because I have failed to be a cheerleader, I have never told them that they can't do what they're doing. I have never rejected them, especially my daughter. All I've ever said to her is, I love you, I miss you, and I'm going to miss you every day for the rest of my life. Until you're back in my life, I will miss you every day.
there are activists who will tell children that they should reject their parents, they should
You
reject
will,
their
yeah.
family.
Can you imagine telling a child that it's okay to leave your parents if they don't give you what you want? Do we do that with anything else? If your mom won't give you a pony, find a better mom. I mean,
And
I
there
know
are
it's
moms
a
out
trivial
there.
sounding example. That's a trivial sounding example, but basically there are people saying, yeah, just leave your parents.
And there are activists who will step in and take on the role as mother, even though they
Absolutely.
haven't been there as a
Yeah,
mother.
yeah, they call it your glitter. Rachel McKinnon famously called it your glitter family. We'll be your glitter family.
How does
Um,
that feel? The idea that there are people out there who feel like they can replace you as a mother, who think that they're a better mother simply because they're they're telling your children what they want to hear.
Um, yeah, I mean, as you can imagine, that pretty much feels like robbery to me. Um, my children have a mother, and I will always love them. Anyway, I had never told my daughter anything except I love you very much, and um, it will very soon be 4 years since I've seen my son, and 2 years since I've seen my daughter. And I mean, I don't get pictures, I don't get updates, I don't know, I don't even know how they are. They've cut me completely out. And what I am finding and beginning to document, and um, kind of what I'd like to bring into public knowledge a little bit more, is that this is not an unusual case or story, not by any means. Um, the the actual in more cases than not, the child will, as an adult, will leave the family if they don't feel like their family is adequately um, embracing their new ideology. They will leave the family.
I've even heard activists tell children to run away from home.
Run away from home. But I've talked to many, many, many parents, because I am a parent advocate. I do parent support. I have several parents groups online and in person. And I have talked to probably over 100 parents. But it is more common than not that the child will actually leave the family. And I've talked to many parents who haven't seen their daughters for years and either don't know where they are, never talk to them, or it's extremely infrequent and strained. It will never be the same again. I need to plug my computer in just for a second. So I'm going to move for a second. I don't want to run out of battery in the middle here. Let's get back there. So anyway, so I just wanted to, I need people to understand that the narrative, because I'm basically the first or maybe even the only parent that's come out with my story publicly, used my own name and said, this is what happened to me, because I believe in the power of narrative. I think it's really powerful. And I think that people need to understand what's going on and how families are being imploded.
So as
So
we sort of wrap up,
mhm.
I think we're getting near the end of our meeting time.
Okay.
If there's something that you could tell your children, if you thought that they could hear you, if they're watching this, what would you say to them?
I love you so much. I just love you so much. And um, I want you to be happy. Um, I want you to be who you are, and you don't have to be not transgender in order for me to love you. I do love you, no matter what you choose to do. I don't think that that means that I have to lie about what I think. I don't think that good relationships are based on lies or emotional bribery. I don't think, just like I don't think that you should have to um, be a certain person in order for me to love you. I don't think that it should have to go the other way either. I think that adult genuine relationship is a relationship based on mutual respect, where both parties are allowed to have their own opinions and feelings. So I mean, I genuinely believe that young people who are wrestling with this issue are incredibly valuable. Um, they're searching, they're looking for something, and personally, I think they're looking in the wrong place. But that doesn't mean that they don't deserve compassion and love and caring and understanding. And I think that in this world, we've somehow conflated understanding with agreement.
think that's so
And
important. Um, as a mother of kids, there are times when we don't agree. And it's scary to me that there's a group of people out there telling children that if their parents don't agree with them 100%, that they should run away from home and they should find a glitter family.
mhm. Or that someone will give them a free mom hug.
Right.
Did you hear about that too? The free mom hug movement?
Yeah.
Because
So
apparently there's all these parents that are rejecting and hating their kids because of their trans identity, where as far as I can find, every story that I have heard is not the parents rejecting the kids, it's the kids rejecting the parents. It's the other way around. The parents are holding on to their, trying to hang on to that relationship. How do you hang on to a relationship when you're being blackmailed that if you don't agree, they're going to leave you without lying? I mean, it's an incredibly tight wire that parents are walking. They're trying to maintain the relationship with their parent, with their kids, stay in that relationship, tell them the truth, but not too directly because they might get kicked out of their kid's life any minute if they say the wrong thing. It's just an untenable way for a relationship to have to go on, and it just breaks my heart.
it's such a shift in how society is too, because it used to be that society would support parents
Mhm.
and back them up when they were making tough decisions that were based on encouraging healthy and safe behaviors in their kids.
Right.
And now we don't have that community support. In fact, we have a very strong LGBTQ community that encourages these dangerous and harmful behaviors and undermines parents on it. It seems like every turn the parents
Mhm.
are being questioned and undermined,
Yeah.
and there isn't really a situation where parents can be successful in that case, because parents need to have some degree of respect and authority to do their job.
Right. Well, they're not supported by the medical community, the educational community. They're not supported by counselors. They're told by all the professionals they turn to that they're wrong as well.
Mm.
So it really is kind of a no-win situation for parents, and they need. That's why I'm an advocate, because parents need support and understanding, and they're just not getting it. So,
So before we end, is there anything that we didn't talk about that you wanted to address?
um, I hate to have a conversation where I don't give anyone like, okay, what should I do then? Um, and so I guess what I'd like to say to people is that, if you do know someone who's a parent who is dealing with this, please be supportive. Please just give them time, let them talk. Understand that they're grieving, that they're basically being asked to bury their child while they're still alive and accept a new one. I mean, it's just an unbelievably hard situation. Um, and Read up, and just try to listen and understand. um, and We're hoping there will be more resources out for people soon. I'm really looking forward to Abigail Schreier's new book. I can't wait to read it. So people need to get educated, and we also need to get a little more backbone so that we're willing to say hard things, true hard things. um, and sometimes that's really hard to do. So, but if we would all say them, they would become much easier to say. So,
Well, thank you so much for sharing this
yeah,
story.
thanks,
It's
Erin.
hard for me to have. I mean, my heart just breaks for you, Lynn.
Oh, thank
I
you.
can tell how much you love your kids, and I just know one day that they're going to reach out to you. I just have that hope.
I pray
Um,
for that day to happen, and I pray for it to happen soon. I miss them every day. I haven't gone. It hasn't gone any easier in years. It hasn't gotten any easier, and I don't think I've gotten through one day yet without having at least. I think about them every day, a large portion of every day. It hasn't gotten any easier. So yeah.
well, thank you for sharing your story, um, and I know that you'll help other people by sharing your
Yeah.
story.
Thank you, Erin. That's what I'm hoping for.